All right, we are back with your favorite podcast show of the week. This is Location Weekly, and this is our annual prediction show. So happy New Year, everybody. We took a week off to celebrate. Brianna, how are you? Are you fully celebrated?
I have celebrated everything. I have celebrated thankfulness and the birth of Christ and a New Year. And today we celebrated Three Kings Day, or Dia de los Reyes Magos. And tomorrow I have my daughter's 5-year birthday. So I have been celebrating nonstop. This is a busy celebration season for me. But yeah, Happy New Year, man. 2020.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, I feel like I gained 10 pounds and I have to go like on a month-long fast or something now because it's just
What?
so much food. Yeah, we also had my dad's 80th birthday party on Saturday with like a whole bunch of extended family. So that was just another feast of way too much food. And
But that's
yeah,
worth celebrating. I mean, come on.
yeah, it's done. It's sort of done. I hope it's done. Yeah. So, anyways, we are back, and this is episode number 445. And yeah, so we're recording live on January 6th here. And as I said, this is our annual prediction show. So a little bit different format, where we're just going to talk about what we think, could be some of the big trends in 2020. We also have, we tend to, when we do these shows, pick a company that we think is super exciting to watch in 2020. And yeah, so I think we'll just jump right into it. Brianna, you kick us off with your first prediction trend for the year?
All right, well, I'll just go ahead and get the kind of less exciting one out of the way. We talked a lot about this in our final show of 2019 when we were covering the New York Times piece and, really talking about the implications of data on our privacy as consumers. And so, we obviously had some thoughts around, what's good and what's bad. And I expect that will be a continued trend as it has been the past few years in 2020. I think we're going to see more privacy regulations, but what I'm hopeful for is also, and challenges, but I'm hopeful that we see the progress and movement towards one, bringing it all under, for the US, one federal, regulation that is streamlined across all of the states and properties, and that we're not kind of doing this state by state because it makes it really complicated for anybody in the industry, anybody who wants to do any digital marketing or, data capturing to comply. But also, I hope that we get the legislation right this time, because I think that there's some good things and there's some bad things with the way that we've set it up. And I just hope that we get the right people in front of the lawmakers to make sure that technology and industries are considered, as well as the impact implications on privacy. So I think that what we'll see as well that will be affected by this, I think we're going to see a decrease in data that's available, whether that's movement data, location data, audience data, all of those things. But I think that we'll see an increase in the quality of data. So because consumers are staying opted in or not opting out, or choosing to opt in, or we're leveraging more first party data, I think the value of that data and the quality of that data we're going to see continue to go up. And then, I think the true test of all of this, honestly, though, is going to be around our elections here, and how this plays out, because we all know that politics do not play clean. They like to play dirty. And so let's see who actually abides by all of these rules that our own government is putting in place. So that's my first prediction. Yeah. What you
Yeah,
think?
so I think in a lot of ways you're bang on. I think that there's certainly going to be limits this year in the availability of data. You will probably see, just like with GDP, when GDPR came in Europe, some companies could not get compliant just in terms of how their technology was architected, and pulled out of certain markets. So I think, if we end up in a more regulated, national regulated environment in the US, I think you're going to see, some companies go under. But I will say this, I think while what you're saying, I agree with in terms of the availability of data will go down, and the quality of the data will go up. Completely agree with that. I'm not sure that, given the current political climate, given it's an election year, given a number of other things, that we're going to be able to get legislation through at a national level in the U.S. in 2020. I can't see it happening. And you may get a couple more states, kind of follow the California CCPA type of framework, but I think it's going to be difficult to kind of get anything happening, especially if your government ends up in a war with Iran or whoever else right now. So I think there's just going to be a lot of distraction, and it'll be tough to get something through. So yeah, but definitely privacy and quality of data remain paramount issues in our industry, and is definitely something to watch. All right, on my side, I think the first thing I wanted to talk about is I think this is the year where 5G becomes a thing, and we've heard from the mobile operators around the globe. China's all over this already. Japan's all over this already. Obviously, they've got the leg up there with the Olympics coming this summer. So there's been a lot of infrastructure investments. But I think, sort of the advent and the rollout of 5G really changes the game for our industry and for the public overall as well. So you're talking about, delivering broadband speed over mobile. You're talking about really true video streaming, enhanced location-based services, data capacity and speed that 5G affords, I think is really amazing. And so I think, when you talk about what you can do with video in particular, over this type of network, and the quality of that video as well, from everything from home security monitoring cameras and Ring cameras that we were just talking about earlier, over mobile devices, to Amazon shipments, to you name it. I think 5G really has the ability to kind of change a lot of what we can do and what we can deliver, and the quality and availability of data in a lot of ways. So in some ways, it counteracts, the privacy rules, but on the other side, I think it also, heightens the issue, right? I think it means that there's more data and there's more services and there's more flowing across the network, meaning there's more we need to be taking better control over and more care over as well. So, so I think 5G is a game changer for 2020.
Yeah, I agree with most of that, for sure. I do think that 5G will be a game changer for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, speed of things, including advertising. But one thing that I do think is going to be a challenge is I think it's going to be slower getting rolled out than we anticipate. So I know that we've been talking here in the States about 5G for a while now. But I think that it's going to, because of the need for there to be so many towers, so many places for that signal to, latch on to. And I think that it's going to be a much slower pace transition to 5G than we are anticipating here. But I do think that we'll see some significant uptick this year, just maybe not as much as people are hoping for. So,
yeah, cool.
All right. Well, kind of on the ad tech subject, this is sort of an overarching topic. I think we're going to see some big ad tech changes this year in 2020. And I will start off with sort of what CTV and OTT are doing in the space and how that's changing things up, and with the ability to do this sort of like one-to-one marketing and advertising, and, showing me an ad for a minivan and my neighbor an ad for a sports car from the same maker. We're talking about how does this roll out and how does the technology behind it work. So I think we're going to see a lot of advancements on bridging different programmatic advertising as a whole in the different channels, but also the data that we leverage for those channels. So, we've seen a lot of this mobile data that's been able to, be used to enhance even just stationary billboards, as well as digital out of home, as well as, anything from traditional media streaming. So I think we're going to continue to see that data affected there. And then I think we're going to see a lot more AI and machine learning continue to develop here. So we're going to look at, all the different mediums relying on great amounts of this data that we always reference here on this show. And we talk a lot about whether it's the privacy side of things or, all the cool stuff that we can do with it. And then the last thing for ad tech, I think we're going to see a lot more acquisitions. We saw so many in 2019. We saw a lot of bigger companies kind of just eating up smaller companies, utilizing one small piece of technology here, something else there. And I think that we're going to see, strength, more strengthening of the quality companies. And I think we're going to see some of these, smaller players being weeded out, just because they may not have something that's, setting them apart, or maybe they're not using the best data, or maybe their approach isn't the best. But I think that we're just going to continue to see more acquisitions in this space, and it's going to certainly further identify and solidify who the key players are in the ad tech industry.
Yeah, so I'll pick up on your last point. I completely agree with. I think we're going to see a lot of acquisition activity this year. A lot of smaller players coming together, a lot of roll-ups, and things like that. And I think for me, one of the reasons for that is I actually in the ad tech space, I think we're going to see a slowdown in the IPO rollout this year than what we've seen in the past. And I think a lot of that, is going to kind of come on the backs of, what's happened with WeWork and what's happened with a number of companies, where there just wasn't, good vetting of management and team and, a whole bunch of other characteristics of these businesses that, cause these collapses. I mean, look at, what Uber has had to go through to kind of get reborn again, and so on. Right. So I think from an investment perspective, I think we're going to see less of an interest in sort of going the IPO route with these big ad tech companies this year, and more of an appetite for let's fund, some acquisition, some M&A activity, some roll-ups of maybe 4 or 5 small companies in an area, into one bigger player that can compete, with a Google or Facebook or somebody else, that they can't compete with on their own, at the scale that they have. So, yeah, for sure, I like that. So, okay, so for me, I'll call this tech, going political, and kind of centering in again on your upcoming election in the U.S. I think there's kind of 2 issues here for me. I think what we're seeing is posturing right now. The Democratic candidates, many of them, who are running for leadership of the party, and on the other side, the Republicans and so on. This battle about, the power of the big players, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons, threats from Elizabeth Warren of breaking up these companies and splitting them up into pieces and, all those kinds of things. And obviously, Facebook's cozied up to the Trump administration. You've got a lot of kind of this maneuvering going on with the big ad tech players in the space, right? And at the same time, dovetail that now with the data privacy discussions that we've been having, and you just raised in your first point. I think there's a lot of issues that need to get resolved, and yet at the same time, everybody, from the local candidate level, on up, it wants to leverage this data to influence the election, to influence, the voter turnout, to influence campaign strategies, to influence all of it. And I think you're going to see a lot of ad dollars roll into our industry against these platforms to buy, audiences and to buy segments and to buy, targeting of, the population to, try and win support and win votes and win favor. So I think you're going to see a lot of location-based advertising, around the political spectrum. And then I think the other side of it is, sort of the geopolitical part of it in terms of the role that other countries, ad tech platforms, let's say, play in what's going on in the U.S. or North America overall. So, platforms like TikTok that are super popular, right now with the consumer population, that some say is, a Chinese spy tool and things like this. Like, so you have a lot of this kind of discussion about, do platforms get banned completely from certain markets? So not just breaking up companies, but sort of just annexing companies out of markets completely, because of potentially geopolitical issues, with Russia or China or whatever else the case might be. So I think you're going to see our industry really change in terms of how the data is used from a political perspective, what it might mean based on the outcomes of these elections potentially for these bigger players in terms of their ability to move forward and operate. And I think the politics play a big role in tech this year.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think that we saw the impact that data can have in this past election. And something I was reading recently was, there's a lot of companies that are doing this sort of real-time vetting of all this different media and advertising, and it may be from the same political party or the same message, but they may be able to test out something like 5,500 ads, in a very quick time frame to see what resonates. And then by obviously consumers' response to those ads, they can sort of micro segment you, which is what we saw again in the past election. So I think that think about what technology can do and how it can evolve in 4 years. That's a massive amount of change and new capabilities that are, for the taking probably from either political party. So I totally agree with you on that one.
Cool.
All right. So my next prediction is something that we've talked about this a lot on the show, but voice on the rise, obviously. I think we're going to continue just to see how we have different use cases for voice. We've seen it for search a lot, obviously, but we're going to continue to see new things and implications for voice. I think about all the ways that I use it with, my smart devices at home, whether it's like on my TV or with other devices on my phone, that we're constantly using it. And I think that we're going to just continue to see that evolve, whether that's for ordering, new things or just convenience factors or, anything and everything. One of the stats that we had on a pretty recent podcast that we did was just about how I think voice search had risen like 30% since like 2017 or something. It was just a massive amount. And it was just crazy that, more searches have been done with voice than have been done for like, the entire first 10 years of search availability. So it's just crazy how quickly this has grown. And I definitely anticipate that growing a lot. Not super groundbreaking or exciting for those of you who are listening or watching, but I mean, I'm excited to hear, some like small startup that comes in and just does something really cool with voice that we're like, whoa, because somebody's going to do it. I don't know who, but somebody's going to come in and do something way beyond, search or ordering that we have not thought of. So I think that could happen this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think voice is, it's going to be a huge year for the growth of voice at a number of levels, whether it's in the home or in the car, or, in the office building. I think you're going to see it all over the place. It's interestingly enough, for Christmas this year, my son, he loves playing around with all kinds of little tech, and that's his thing. So one of the things he got for Christmas was this package of these like smart plugs, like so you stick it into a normal outlet, and it's a Wi-Fi connected, or it actually can connect over Bluetooth or Zigbee or anything. But he's using it with Wi-Fi, so it connects to the Wi-Fi modem in our home. And he's got like 3 or 4 of these, I think, in his bedroom. And he's got all of his things hooked up to these different plugs, from his fish tank in his room, like the light on his fish tank, to other lights throughout his room. And so he's got this all connected to his phone. He's got an Amazon Echo in his room as well. And he's got the app for that, and he's got it all synced up, and he's basically linked all these plugs and built this whole sort of routine. And he can basically say, Amazon, it's bedtime, and basically it turns off all the different lights in his room all in one command. And he has like a white noise machine that he puts on for sleeping, and it turns that on at the same time. And like, it's amazing, like that you can kind of do all this just with, smart plugs and kind of tying it all together. it's really cool. So
Love it.
yeah. All right. So the last one for me, and we kind of touched on this, is just kind of the role that AI is going to play this year. Obviously, here in Toronto, it's kind of like the hotbed for AI startups right now. Hundreds of millions of dollars are flowing into investment in AI companies, and this is happening all over the world. We just happen to be one of the biggest hubs for it here. But for me, I think it's not the sort of Terminator, robot revolution type of AI that we see in the movies. This is kind of the AI that nobody notices. It just sort of creeps into everyday life, and I think we're going to see a lot of that. A lot of companies be very successful in what I'll say is like AI as a service. So you're seeing like Microsoft and IBM with Watson and a whole bunch of different kind of service providers like that kind of provide these AI platforms on a subscription type of model that can kind of just power a lot of things. And of course, we use platforms like that in what we do in my cannabis startup, Grant Level Insights, that sits on this sort of AI machine learning type of platform as well. So I think you're going to see, sort of that kind of growth. I think the other part of where we see AI, I think, is on the hardware side, and that's something we don't talk about too much. But I think like companies like Intel and Cisco and companies like that are building AI directly into chips, into hardware, into just the devices that are all around us. And so you actually see the AI. You don't see the AI, but the AI exists, on the chip or in the hardware or in the thermostat or in, whatever part of the building where that equipment sits. And it's kind of just doing its thing, and it's learning all the time. And the interesting thing for me about that is, I don't know if you saw recently, I don't think we talked about it on the show, but, we talk about a lot about these smart speakers. And Sonos went out and did a deal with some little company in Sweden somewhere. They acquired some AI company over there, and what they're doing is now with all their Sonos new hardware that's coming out, they're actually taking the AI and the smarts of that voice technology, tying back to what you're saying, and they're actually building it into the device itself. So the device is actually smart and can do what it wants to do, or what you want it to do, without actually being connected to the internet. So it's all local. And that's super interesting to me, right? To have the smarts in the device. And I think you're going to see a ton more of that type of stuff, and a lot more VC funding flowing into that space.
Yeah, I think that's really cool because, as you know, from house to house or person to person, that type of building those models is going to vary drastically, right? So, something that's funny is like lately, I don't know what's going on with my Alexa at home, but she's just been kind of like freaking out randomly and doesn't I don't know, she doesn't hear what we're saying, or she just thinks we're saying something completely different. It's like all of a sudden we're speaking a new language to her. And so I think that being able to obviously cater towards each individual consumer who purchases a device, or be able to learn different behaviors based on how you perform versus the norm, or because everybody's going to have different things, I think is really cool. So yeah, I think that there's so many different things that we're going to see develop there, as you stated. Some will notice, and others maybe not at all. And hopefully there's no AI that we see being used for bad, or losing control, or taking over humans. Not this year.
Yeah, so there you go. And I guess the last, just to throw one other little point in, not related to AI, but in terms of just one other trend from my side, and I won't go into too deep, but I think one of the other things that I was just reading this article recently about the growth of facial recognition. We've talked about this on the show on and off, and obviously in some U.S. states it's not happening at all, or some cities like San Francisco banned it completely. But I think overall we're seeing a growth around this. In China, obviously it's everywhere, it's mandated. I think in the Asian markets overall, we're going to see a lot more of this. But these guys were saying, I'm just going to go to the stats here. They said that it's projected to grow 12.5% annually between now and 2024, the use of facial recognition technology. So that's significant to me. And It's projected to be a $9.06 billion market by that same time in 2024. So I think governments are investing in this for sure. You've got just even in the US, the FBI has a facial recognition database that covers 117 million Americans, apparently. So there you go.
Yeah. So when you think you're being tracked by your phone.
Yeah, your face is out there too. So there you go. So
Well,
yeah,
my small extra prediction was sort of towards your industry, unless you had more to add on the facial.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Throw in your last one there.
No, this was just like an extra tidbit since we were talking about things that grow. I was saying I think we're going to see a lot of growth in the cannabis industry, especially the technology around that, obviously. So things from how the earth is reading and, you know, does the plant need more moisture and all of those different types of things, to how do dispensaries and different, you know, growers move things around, and how do they make their product even, do they understand the behaviors of their consumers. You know, it's a typical CPG type of dilemma, because you've got lots of different strains and lots of different, you know, just like you have lots of different types of soda or, you know, items in a grocery store. I think we're going to see a lot of growth in technology around that industry. It's really been quite untapped, you know, to this point, just because now we're just starting to see legalization as a whole in Canada and state by state here in the US. And so it'll be interesting to see how things develop this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, you know, I'm building a company around it, so I have to agree with that. Yeah, so I mean, for us at Ground Level Insights, I think, you know, it's going to be a big year. You know, we're seeing a lot of demand already, just in potential retail operators and from the growers themselves, in terms of trying to understand what products to develop, and looking for data to kind of help guide and steer a lot of that in terms of where to put their ad dollars, and where to kind of put their product development. You know, if you look at CPGs like guys like Coca-Cola, for example, you know, they don't just go and say we're going to develop a new, you know, flavored beverage, you know, without, you know, looking at a lot of data and kind of looking at what the demand might look like, and, you know, complementary products in the market that people are, you know, already consuming, and all kinds of things like that. And I think for cannabis, it's the same. As these markets legalize, you know, these companies are looking for data to help justify where to kind of put their money, and where to build stores, and from a site selection perspective, and all those kinds of things. You know, the same things that apply, you know, to the rest of the world of retail, and you know, how we use location data. So I think for sure, excited about that. And yeah, so that's our predictions for the year. So one of the things we also do on this show every year is we pick a company that we think is kind of a company to watch in 2020, that we're excited about. And so, Aubriana, I'll throw it over to you to start.
Oh, okay. So as I told Asif, I am definitely voting for myself for Prom Queen this year, and I have you know, big and high hopes and expectations for Gather Lab. So obviously this is the new business unit of Digital Envoy that we spun off in 2019. And so, you know, with everything that's happening, I think in the privacy concerns and the data space there, and the approach that we're taking from a non-PII perspective, and just the integrity that we've had as a 20-year player in the location-based data and services industry, I'm very confident that we have the ability to differentiate ourselves and make a name for ourselves in 2020. And our approach on the industry, I think, will make a big impact on, you know, not only big enterprises that utilize this type of data and services, but also smaller businesses who have sort of been looking for opportunities to better understand their consumers and maybe just couldn't do it with the larger players in the space. So I think it's going to be an awesome year for us. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to spend too much time going into it, because I know you have a little bit of a bigger company to talk about next.
Yeah, no, but I mean, obviously, you know, excited for you guys and where you're going to go this year. And I think, I think, you know, kind of your approach to it, obviously, you know, we believe in at the LBMA and at Ground Level. And obviously we're working with you guys as well. And yeah, so I'm only, you know, high hopes for where Gather is going to go this year. So yeah, on my side, a little bit bigger company, Amazon. I picked these guys 2 years ago as well, but the reason I'm picking them this year, I think, is slightly different, and that is they have a program that we haven't talked about on this show that I think could really change the game, especially for SMBs in the market coming into 2020. And they call it FBA, which means fulfillment business, and so what I like about it is that if you're a small business, if you're a retailer, if you have products that you sell, if you have to keep inventory, basically what Fulfilled by Amazon is a program that takes all that complexity of the inventory, the storage, the fulfillment, the shipping, all that kind of stuff that's a hassle for a small business to do, and kind of offloads that to Amazon, who's obviously the best in the world at doing that. I mean, nobody else can do prime delivery in one day like they can. And so if you think about it, no matter what your small business is, if you've got your own little cosmetic line that you promote on Instagram, or you've got some branded T-shirts that you sell, or whatever it is, all you have to do now is worry about your marketing and your promotion and your brand, and your web presence and your social media and all of that, and kind of promoting what you're good at. And then when it comes to the orders and the fulfillment of those orders, you can actually turn that all over to Amazon, have them store your product in their warehouse, have them ship it out with all their expertise and all their people resources to get that done, for a very low cost, efficient way. And of course, the benefit to them is they're getting more data on everything, which is what they do. But the benefit to you, I think, as a small business owner, or even a bigger business owner, mid-sized business owner, I think it could be huge with this. So, kind of think about Amazon as a third-party fulfillment service for your products and services.
Yeah, what I really like about this part, though, in this prediction, Asif, for Amazon, is that Amazon basically took what they had done with the cloud and they just replicated it with real life. So, everything that they're storing for you from a data perspective in the cloud, they are now doing in real life with real, hard goods that, can be shipped and delivered anywhere. So it's like, it just makes sense because they're playing in an industry where you think like, oh, this is a whole new vertical, but in essence, they're doing the same thing just with, physical goods and instead of, digital, which is pretty amazing.
Now, the downstream effect for this is if a lot of companies start embracing this, what does this mean for FedEx and UPS and DHL and those kinds of companies that all of a sudden don't have that business? I don't know.
Eventually, one of them are going to get acquired by Amazon.
There you go. Right there you go.
There's a prediction.
There's a prediction. So that's it. That's our show. Thank you for listening and watching every week. Hopefully, it's been a little bit different today. And so if you've got feedback, if you've got your own predictions, if you've got ideas and where you think the market's going this year, by all means, reach out to us and let us know. We're easily found on all the social media channels out there, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all over the place. So we just thank you for listening and watching every single week. And we'll be back next week with our regular format. So thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.